These are the most shocking government conspiracy theories on Joe Rogan Podcast. Episode 2218, Joe Rogan with Sam Tripoli reveals hidden intelligence assassination layer. Episode number 1852, Joe Rogan with Sam Tripoli dives into Operation High Jump mysteries.
Yeah, have you ever looked into Klaus Schwab's, dad?
No.
Have you ever heard of New Schwabenland?
New Schwabenland.
You never heard of New Schwabenland?
No.
Have you ever heard of Operation High Jump?
I knew I was going to love this podcast. No.
Dude,
What's
it's
Operation
crazy.
High Jump? What does that mean?
Okay, so at one point, some people are like, what's going on with Antarctica? Have you heard of this, where they sent Admiral Byrd up?
What's going on in Antarctica?
Yeah, so the U.S. government's like, something's going on with Antarctica. There's some activity up there. We want to find out what's going on. So they send this cat named Admiral Byrd up to investigate with a giant fleet, just a fleet to go bang, bro. You know?
When was this?
I think this was in the when was Eisenhower in? Was it the
50s?
Yeah, it was
60s?
right around just either around World War II or right after it. And so they sent Admiral Byrd up to go find out. And according to his journal that they found much later, he basically met with UFOs, Nazi UFOs.
What?
Yes,
Nazi UFOs.
The Nazis.
The Nazis had a flying saucer.
Had made a deal, basically, working with
What?
You've never heard this?
No.
It's the greatest story ever, bro. It's the greatest
so
story.
the Nazis made a deal with the aliens?
Yes.
Holy shit.
For technology, and the deal was they were going to work together, okay? I know this sounds crazy. So basically, the aliens go down, and Klaus Schwab's dad go down and meet with Eisenhower. It's gonna be like we could either do it one way or the other way. We could do it nice or we can do it the wrong way, and that's where they say Eisenhower made a deal with these aliens that they could kidnap people and do experiments, but they couldn't just do it anywhere. They had specific places, which were our national forest.
What?
Yeah, dude. You've never heard of this.
You're making this sound
No.
as if this is like a story that is commonplace.
Well, for my people, it is.
Jamie, count me out here. Have you heard the
Honestly,
story?
brand new.
You've never heard of this? You've never heard of Operation High Jump, bro?
I feel like I've heard of that, but I haven't. Not in this context.
This sounds
Let me see
amazing.
if I
Please
looked
keep
up that
going.
way.
And
So,
this is where the missing 411 come from.
The missing information? What missing information?
No, the missing 411.
What do you mean by that?
Which is all these people have mysteriously disappeared in force. And they don't know
You're not
how.
talking about the missing 411 like information.
No.
You're talking- so missing 411 is the number of people that have been abducted?
Yeah, and it's all really weird because they all have a lot of similar characteristics. German-born, German background, highly intelligent, and I don't know how weird you want to get, bro.
I
but-
want to get weird.
Okay, bro. They think this might be some time-traveling Nazi shit, bro. I know you're going to think I'm crazy, but it's true, dude. That's what they believe, and they made
Who
a
is
deal.
These they folk?
Who?
When you say they believe, who are these they?
The
people?
conspiracy people.
Are they united on?
No, there's a whole different. There's a lot of
Many
warring
factions.
clans, bro. There's a lot of warring clans, dude.
But that one
How
is,
deep do you want to go?
What is interesting is how advanced the engineering of the Germans was. It's really interesting when you think about car manufacturers like Audi and Volkswagen, and Mercedes. It's all out of BMW. Didn't BMW make engines for Nazi fighter pilots? I think that's what they first started off
They
doing.
all did, bro.
But
I mean,
think that's what BMW did, right?
yeah, 100%. And then we were
And Audi made Hitler a car.
Yeah,
Hitler had a race car. an
that was
Audi race
never
car.
part of their marketing plan, though.
Yeah,
that would
they're-
have been a crazy campaign.
What does it say there?
So 1939, BMW 801D piston
Piston radial aircraft engine, and national origin is Germany. So
World War II planes.
in that year, they made World War II planes. They made engines for World War II planes. That's wild, man.
I mean, IBM was making stuff for these camps too, dude. It's crazy.
IBM?
Yeah, like
They had
We've
computers?
talked about that before.
yeah,
Right. What was that?
There's a book.
What did they do?
They were it was the precursor to actual computers. It was like a filing system to keep track of stuff.
Yeah, of who was where and what into these
Oh,
camps.
that's right. I'm remembering this.
And then oh yeah, man, it gets super
And so
weird.
that,
but the
it
place,
wasn't called IBM, right? Was it called something else?
I
think it was IBM.
Book. Yeah, the book is called IBM and the Holocaust: A Strategic Alliance Between Nazi
I
Germany.
mean,
and
you ain't
America's
fucking around with that
Powerful
title, huh?
That title is rough.
Yeah, dude. You're like,
If you're IBM,
straight
you
to
got
the
to be like,
point.
fuck, did we do that? Did we really do this?
I don't
The
remember
strategic alliance between Nazi Germany and America's most powerful corporation expanded. Interesting.
So the area of Antarctica they went to was New Schwabenland.
New Schwabenland. Do you think that's why he dresses with the space
100%, bro.
Dun,
Yeah.
dun, dun,
Yeah.
dun, dun, dun. So they're all in contact with the aliens.
I think, well, dude, I mean, it gets into. See, a lot of people think this is about power and money.
What do you think it's about?
It's spiritual war, dude. These people got all the money and all the power. They got more than they could ever want.
I think they want complete control.
But that gets into spirituality, not just complete control, but lowering your vibration and jacking your loosh. Your spirit energy.
You think they're doing that consciously, or do you think they're doing it like they're chasing the economics, and along the way it actually becomes a spiritual battle? Because everything is a spiritual battle.
I think it's done purposely. I think they're
evil.
I think they're at low. There's low frequency stuff going on, and they've made deals with people and things, and that's why I think's going on.
That was very ambiguous, but I understand where you're going with it.
Okay, I mean, if you want me, I just don't want to get too weird too fast, bro. But I'm like,
We just opened up. We're good.
I 100% believe this is spiritual war, and that these people are working with dark entities, and that's what this is all about.
Let's imagine this. If there was like an alien race that came here from another planet and gave just a random group of people technology.
Yeah.
Gave them an understanding of things and how to do things. How much of a record do you think they would keep of that? Wouldn't that be something that people would want to talk about?
Yeah, but that's the beauty of the internet, that we're now able to do that. We could never do that before.
So you think that's what this story is about? That the story is about they went there and they met with aliens and the aliens gave them information?
I mean, Hitler was really into the occult.
Yeah, I know,
like he would
was.
send people all over the place.
He had a lot of bad ideas.
Yeah, he had a lot of bad ideas. But see, the occult has a negative connotation to it. Not everything involved with the occult is negative. What the occult really means is secret.
Secret.
So there's not as much
That's
around.
what the word means?
Yeah, it's basically it means like it's hidden.
I always associate it with people that believe in silly shit. When someone starts talking about the occult, I'm always like, how do you feel about ghosts? You know, how do you feel about, like, when people start talking about like dark magic, I'm like, for real? You sure?
I believe in that there's some energy manipulation, but
I don't disbelieve.
Yeah,
I don't disbelieve.
Listen, I don't know what's going on. I just kind of read stuff, and I'm like, how does this fit into the puzzle, right? How does this fit into the jigsaw of life? And you start looking around, and you just start going, okay, man, this is interesting. That is interesting. This starts to make sense.
Episode number 1530 with Duncan Trussell explores Bohemian Grove mystery.
And I say this many times, and I'll say it some more. Give me that lighter.
You got it, Fred.
Alex Jones, he's made some mistakes and some big ones, but he's also actually exposed some real shit, and he owns up to the mistakes he's made. They're not good. He doesn't think they're good. There's a thing about finding conspiracies everywhere that's not good for your brain. I really believe this. I think that if you go looking for those things and that's all you look for, and you look for them all the time, you can get real paranoid and real crazy. And then there's also a bunch of people that are trying to stop you from doing that because you do expose some crazy shit.
Yeah.
You know, he was talking about Epstein a long time ago.
I know.
A long time ago. He was saying there's a fucking island, and they take all these rich politicians and some celebrities, and they bang these kids. And I was like, come on. He was telling me this a long time ago. So he's also the one who told me about Bohemian Grove. Well, I actually watched it. I think this tape was actually made before I met him. So he went and snuck in to this place where like former presidents go. There's a photograph of it's Ronald Reagan with Herbert Walker Bush and a couple other people all standing around. And it's like these are the people that used to hang out at this place, and they would put on robes, and they would worship an owl god, and they would burn an effigy. And they're playing, and Alex snuck in and made video footage of this shit. And no one's denying that it's real. This really did happen. So they're in with these bankers and former presidents, and they're dressed like druids.
Yes.
And some guy brings over something that it's an effigy that's supposed to be a body, a wrapped up effigy. It's also a bunch of sticks in a blanket, but it's like shaped like a body.
Yeah.
And then they drop it on the fire, and they're all worshiping an owl god.
Why is that bad?
Imagine if you saw those, if that's what your business is, just finding those things. How crazy you think you get?
First of all, wait.
Then you add in vodka and head wounds.
Wait, hold on, wait. Go to the vodka and head wounds part. What
That's
do you
Alex
mean?
Jones.
Okay, I got you.
A lot of vodka, and he had a bad head injury when he was
God damn
younger.
it, man. When I was in liberal arts school, man, there's this great teacher who changed my life, Sam Scoville. And one of the things he taught was so beautiful. He still teaches there. One of the things he taught was figure out a way to take in all information and then filter out the shit that's not real and keep the real stuff. And like, Alex Jones is like,
Some of the stuff is real.
take what's real and throw out the rest.
There's a good chunk of it that's real. Like I remember he was telling me that there's government's using chemicals that turn frogs gay. I was like, what? What are you talking about? He goes, yes. He goes, pesticides are turning frogs gay. And I'm like, that can't be real. No, there really is.
Is that true?
Yes, there's pesticides that change frogs' genders.
What?
Yes.
But
Some pesticide fucks with frogs' genders.
that sucks.
Maybe it doesn't.
I mean, depends on the frog.
Maybe it's awesome for the frog. Maybe
Depends on the
frogs
frog.
don't give a fuck because they've never been taught homophobia.
Why would they care?
They don't care who they fuck. But there's a real thing that. See if you can find that. It's a pesticide that has some sort of an effect, an unintended effect on frogs' genders. Dude, that's another thing that people don't talk about. Pesticides that have been used in like golf courses and like there's people who live around those. That's a chemical dump.
Yeah, golf courses are fucked up.
Pesticide atrazine can turn male frogs into
Whoa,
females.
Cool.
So there's a fucking pesticide
Berkeley
that
News.
changes the gender, or should I say the sex? Is it the same thing? I
What?
have to sex and gender.
Hey, I'm not getting sucked into that fucking black hole, Rogan. You can keep that shit to yourself. But hey, I'll get sucked into another black hole.
Isn't that crazy though?
Well, yeah.
Okay, what else?
Before we get into that stuff, I want to say this real quick.
Okay.
Is that camera on me? Friends at the Bohemian Grove. Future friends, I should say. I just want you to know, I don't know much about you. I know Alex Jones, probably on vodka drinks.
I don't think he was then. I think he was sober. He started drinking after all this.
Please don't fuck this up.
Sorry.
So you had an infiltrator. Look, I went to a summer camp. We had bonfires. We wore robes. I mean, not like maybe what you do. I just want to say, hey, come on. Invite me, please. I won't tell anybody anything. I've heard you guys are pretty awesome. Actually, what I've heard is the idea was to get a bunch of hardcore neocons together and then mix some artists in the hopes that like having like brushing shoulders with artists would in some way, shape, or form loosen some people up a little bit. And I've also heard you have a tram that connects campsites there to other campsites, meaning you just get in the tram and suddenly you're hanging out with Dick Cheney. Listen, I won't tell anybody. I got a podcast. I won't even tell Joe. Let me in. I'll worship Moloch. I won't worship Moloch if it means hurting people. But I don't understand why people are upset about fucking. By the way, that fucking
Jesus
video.
Christ.
What's wrong with worshiping it?
Nothing.
This is
You're
the
getting
thing.
so excited.
This is the thing that I get confused about here.
Okay.
It's like in our country, we've got people who are Christian.
Yes.
And that's a beautiful thing. And I do love Jesus. I was reading the book of Mark today regarding the parable of the sower. But that being said, I don't think it's fair necessarily to tell people they can't worship an owl or burn an effigy in front of an owl in some kind of symbolic magical ritual that represents the disintegration of your negative energy or whatever it may be. I really don't know. But to me, that's the other problem that's happening right now is like superstition is running rampant. I'm friends with lots of witches. I know a few Satanists. And I know a few people who are into the occult. And I don't know a single one of them that would tolerate child abuse. I don't know a single one that wouldn't kill somebody. Some of them would kill people if they thought they were hurting kids, not and make it so that nobody found the body. Some of the Satanists I know, they would have killed someone probably. I don't know for sure. I'm not trying to throw any Satanists under the bus, but I'm just saying, like, this idea that we can't have alternate pagan religions in our country without immediately being associated with human sacrifice or child abuse, I think that goes against the American spirit. It's like, look, because people don't want to subscribe to your particular, like, very popular global religion doesn't necessarily implicate them in, like, something that is truly a horror, which is human trafficking. So to me, this is the problem. Is like, man, we got to be a little bit more nuanced in our in our conceptualization of these people. Again, I don't know what's going on at the fucking Bohemian Grove, but from what I've heard, it's basically a summer camp for billionaires where they try to get artists in there to, like, loosen them up a little bit. That's what I've heard. I could be wrong.
Who told you this? Is this?
I honestly can't fucking say.
Interesting.
Look, man, I don't know, and I know, and
Have you seen the video of Bohemian Grove? Have you seen it?
The ritual in front of the owl god.
Have you seen it?
Yeah, dude, come with me to Burning Man, and you will see that
I'm sure.
every 50 feet.
Look, I don't think it's that big of a deal. I really don't.
If it involves hurting kids, it's a big deal. And if these motherfuckers are doing anything that involves human sacrifice, hurting human beings, in any application of that,
of course,
then it's the worst thing on earth. And I'm so sorry that I said anything about it. But if
I don't think that's what this is. I mean, obviously, what we're seeing is not that. We don't know what else happens. But what you're seeing is them burning sticks in front of this owl god, and it's like this crazy speech they're giving while it's going on. It's really weird.
Hey,
can we hear some of it? The speech.
I don't know where the speech is in the video. I found another video where they like stabilize the footage. It's like.
But I mean, before this, nobody really believed that. Listen.
Shall have its will of thee. Thee alone don't care. And all the winds, they carry with thy doubts. Hail, fellowship's eternal flame. Once again, midsummer sets us free.
And now they're lighting the effigy on fire, and everybody's cheering.
It looks fun.
Stanley Kubrick had this quote once to Nicole Kidman, I think it was, when they were working on Eyes Wide Shut. See if you can find what she said about the elites that he had said. I know I saved it. I can find it if I have a chance to look at my laptop. But it was something about him, talking about the powers that run the world and that they all have something on each other, and that's how they all can stay together. They all compromise each other. And that's what Skull and Bones was about. Like, that's what all that stuff's about. So he had a much more concise quote on that. But when you see something like that, you go, well, maybe it's like fun that they do it, that nobody knows they do it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like maybe it's like one of those rituals where you get together, your dad thinks it's hilarious, and you both put your hoods on, you go out there and you burn the owl, or you burn the sticks in front of the owl. And what's fun is that you're not supposed to be doing it, and it's a secret, but nothing really is happening. That's also on the table.
Yeah.
It's possible, but it's fucking weird, man. That was weird.
Episode number 2227 with Adrian Iapolucci. Episode 2021. Mike Baker questions UFO whistleblower claims.
With Grush, I think, here's my take on it. I think he believes what he's saying, right? I think he has gone out there. I think I'm legit. Look, he was a 14-year veteran of military and National Reconnaissance Office, and I think he went out and he talked to enough people, and he believes it. I don't think he's out there like spinning a yarn and is worried that now he's gotten over his skis and he's said too many things, and now I don't know. I don't feel like it's tidy, and maybe the difference between us is I spent a lot of time with the government, and the government is sometimes can be really, really dysfunctional, and it goes back to keeping a secret. The idea that they could have this what essentially is a covert action campaign, to spread disinformation about what they actually know, right? When the easier thing to do is just to have the program, if it's the U.S. government's, development of technology, right, and we're doing this, to have the program and just keep your yap shut about it, not go for a disinformation campaign, not try to muddy the waters by doing this, because in a sense, you're just creating more conversation around it. You're creating, now there's a little bit of a, movement within Congress to say we have to do this. Now we have to. So they're going to look perhaps for a misappropriation of funds, right? Because they're not going to pursue like the UAP issue necessarily, right? But they might be interested in pursuing misappropriation of funds. So if you're running a program, if it didn't, again, going back to the idea that it's a U.S. government thing, if you're running a program, that's the last thing you want to do, is because you're doing this program to avoid government oversight. You're not going to create, this alternative narrative that, could generate the sort of publicity or the conversation, particularly up on Capitol Hill, that causes them to then start looking and saying, well, where is money being spent?
Right.
Right? Because there is a trail there, and that could
Right.
cause a problem. Yeah.
What are your instincts when you look at it? If I'm looking at it, I'm saying something's wrong. It seems like bullshit. What are your instincts?
Yeah, I think I would like to, I don't think we're going to get there. But my instinct is to say, how do we solve this, or how do we come to some sort of logical resolution, as opposed to saying what is it right off the bat. My instinct is to say, all right, if the all domain anomaly resolution office has 800 cases, then tell us what those 800 cases are. Let's work our way through them, or have a little bit more transparency about working through those cases. Again, you'll probably whittle them down, right, to, we were doing black files and we were going around talking to people about, various sightings and things. You're basically just crossing things off, going, okay, that was this, that was this, that was this. You find some pretty mundane answers, but you whittle it down to maybe one or two things that you can't explain, and then you can investigate those and say, okay, well, all right, let's dig further on these. But right now it's just like all over the map, and they've got so many cases, and they just kind of lump it all together. Are they doing that to obfuscate and create, this situation where it does seem like bullshit? And I don't know, but I think I'm not willing to shut the door on saying that those handful of those few sightings that where we do have technical data, we got video, we got radar lock, we got gun camera footage, whatever it may be, that can't be explained. I'm not willing to close the door and saying, well, it's is it, because who knows? Maybe China's doing the same thing. Oh, we're leading the hypersonic race right now, great, but they've got another program, and they were responsible for the Tic Tac, right? So we have to pursue it, and if that leads us to the doorstep that says, oh, that's a U.S. government program and they've developed the technology, okay, fine. But, I realize that, I'm not willing to close the door on saying it could be something else. It could be otherworldly, right? Because I just don't know.
It could be.
It could be. I just don't know.
There is
who knows?
that problem
Yeah.
of the infinite nature of space, which seems to actually be getting bigger.
Yeah, there was a good way of putting it that my wife, who's a hell of a lot smarter than I am, tried to explain it to me, and I kept looking at it like this. But she had heard a program at one point where the person explained it like, okay, imagine how vast the ocean is, right? And how we've explored the ocean, but then you look at space and how immense it is, right, compared to the ocean, right?
Right.
The amount that we've explored in space, right, is equivalent to like a wine glass full of ocean water, right? So you take a wine glass full of ocean water, you look at it and you go, there's nothing there, right? There's all those life forms, there's all those fish in the sea. It's kind of like that. And then, you think about space and you think about what we know and what we don't know, and how we imagine, like our limited capacity to imagine what life outside of Earth could look like.
Right.
So yeah.
But when you hear talk of like crashed retrieval programs.
Yeah. That keeps taking me back, and is, to this whole idea of, if there was a crash retrieval and reverse engineering program like David Grush talked about and had been in existence for decades, somebody would have fucking opened their yap and talked about it. I think
Other than Bob Lazar.
other than Bob Lazar, and they would have had some better specifics, right? I mean, that's always the thing. It's always where it falls down. Well, I haven't seen it, but I talked to somebody who knows that it exists, right? And I think maybe it's because we're human, we're programmed to actually want physical evidence, right? We want to actually see it before we believe it. But you know, that really hasn't happened yet.
What's one of the things that's fascinating is the narrative has shifted so wildly from it's completely preposterous to credible people like David Fravor and Ryan Graves and all these different people that are talking about multiple sightings, things that completely defy our understanding of what a vehicle is capable of doing, hovering completely motionless in 120 knot winds, all the whole, you know, whatever that thing is, the cube inside a sphere that they keep seeing over and over again.
Right.
Like,
almost hit one of the aircraft.
Yeah.
You know,
What the fuck is that?
Yeah. And then they land. So I think, you know, one of the good developments out of all of this, and one of the things that may eventually lead to transparency, right? Because it will provide an avenue for these sightings, whether it's commercial or military pilots, as an example, to report it. Right, and to be more, and for the government to take, perhaps, you know, again, it depends on whether it's a big conspiracy or not, to investigate in a more logical manner and in a more detailed manner. So I think just again the sheer act that we're talking about it, which then takes me back to the idea that, you know, if you're running a secret program, you don't want people talking about it, so you're not going to muddy the waters with a false narrative if you don't have to.
Right.
You know, if your concern is that someone's getting close to the truth and you got to do, okay, then maybe so. But, you know.
Do you think it's also possible that there are patriots that do think that the American public deserves to know about this information and they have been sitting on it for a long time? That people like David Grush and all these various people that are coming out, and more apparently are wanting to come out.
Yeah. Well, interesting thing with Grush is, look, he said so during the hearing, right? He said, I can't talk about that. I could talk about it in a skiff, right? In a sensitive, secure environment. All right. Well, if I'm, you know, one of the people on that subcommittee, I'm going to say, you know what, to my staff, schedule, you know, a skiff meeting with Grush. Get him in here, and let's, you know, have him talk classified shit.
Right.
So that would be the next logical step in all of this.
Have they done that yet?
I don't know. I mean, it's, you know.
When he said, I could talk to you about it in a skiff, have people taken him up on that?
Well, you know, you'd have to ask him. No, I wouldn't know.
Right, and they wouldn't tell anybody.
And they wouldn't tell him. And therein lies part of the problem, because if he sits there but if he sits in the skiff and continues to kind of say, well, like, you know, okay, you guys aren't clear to hear this, and I can't. All right. Then you got to start questioning, you know, what he's actually got or what he knows for sure, rather than just having this you know, witness interviews and sort of secondhand information. But I'm much more, I guess the point is, I'm much more interested in the direct sightings than witness interviews, right?
Right. And the thing about him is he's not really a witness, right? He hasn't had any personal encounters with anything.
Right.
He hasn't had personal encounter with a craft. He hasn't seen a retrieved craft. He hasn't seen the biological entities. These are all just programs that he's been made aware of that he felt like people needed to know about.
Yeah. And
that's the narrative.
And again, not to disparage anybody, right? I mean, look, he's, you know, if in fact, you know, somebody leaked his medical records, which it looks like, you know, did happen, right? Then that's pretty bullshit, right? Mm-hmm. Somebody needs to figure out what the hell is happening.
Let's see this. The information from Grush, who said he was unable to discuss specifics on what he told the Pentagon's watchdog arm. Lawmakers want to sit down with the former official in a sensitive, compartmented information facility, a SCIF, to get additional information from him. The group has been blocked, however, by officials that have informed them that Grush doesn't currently have security clearance to discuss the issues in a SCIF, according to Burchett. We think that we'll get there eventually. It's just frustrating. I'm ready to go, and the American public are ready to go, he said. Luna argued that the SCIF with Grush could help lawmakers better understand the type of legislation they need to write regarding UAPs. She said she supports legislation that would declassify information on the phenomenon. So there seems to be some issue of secrecy and what's possible to discuss or what's legal to discuss.
Well, but yeah, look, the government casts a very wide net when you're talking about classified information, right? The government has overclassified information for decades and decades, right? And you've got secret, top secret, you know, code word, you know, and they tend to just hoover everything up and classify it, right? And then it takes fucking forever, right, to go through that process of declassification, and because nobody wants to put their neck out at that point and say, yeah, let's declassify this, right? Once it's in that pot. But the question is, great, you're saying, you can talk about it in a skiff. Well, damn it, then that's the next. That's what the subcommittee should be doing. Right? That's their job, right? If they're curious, right, and if they're sincere about trying to get to the bottom of this, and that's theoretically their job, then they should. Because again, going back to the main thing, and people can say, well, why are you wasting your time on this? But you can always circle back to the top line, which is it's for national security purposes. We want to know what the hell's going on,
Right?
And if so. Yeah, we'll see. I guess that's the question that should be thrown at Grush, or should be thrown at the subcommittee members.
I'm also shocked at how few people care. I feel like people are so overloaded with information today because of social media and because of the news cycle. People are so overloaded with information that this barely registered on people other than UFO nuts.
Yeah. I mean, there was a surprising amount, I thought, anyway, of sort of mainstream media coverage. It wasn't particularly deep, right? It just kind of covered, okay, it was a hearing. And I think they did it because, look, it's UFOs or UAPs, right? Mm-hmm. And so, they knew they'd get some clicks on it if they were putting it online or whatever. And they didn't pursue it, like has been any, I haven't seen any stories that talked about the follow-up with Grush. There were a couple of stories talking about the fact that perhaps his medical records were leaked, as a result.
And the medical records showed what? That he had some sort of a psychiatric condition? That he had an event or something like that?
PTSD. I think he, some suicidal depression issues.
Standard stuff with military veterans.
Yeah. He had done his time in Afghanistan, right? And so. That doesn't, it means nothing, and except for the fact that it shouldn't be out there, right? Those records should be damn well private.
Well, not only that, isn't that what we want? Why don't you shut your little dinger off there, fella?
Is that me going off?
That's you. Yeah, that's why your phone rang,
too.
What the
hell? God,
you got to learn how to use that little switch on the side. But
thank you for my IT lesson.
Isn't that what you want from, that's the whole purpose of providing these services for veterans. That when they do have suicidal thoughts and they are struggling with PTSD, that they get help. The idea that they're shaming him and saying that his report is not credible because of this seems ridiculous.
Bullshit. Yeah.
It's totally bullshit.
Yeah, and he said he's come out since and said, look, I did seek help. I'm in a better place. And he was happy that people were talking about it. They should be talking about it. Look, we lose a shocking number of veterans to suicide, right? And it's disgusting that we don't, that the government doesn't work harder at this, right? And spend more effort. I know a couple of people who do amazingly good work at the VA in terms of counselors, right? They're not managers, they're not executives. They work with the veterans every day, right? And it's incredible what they do. But overall, as a government, our assistance, right, to veterans. You look at the number of homeless situations. It's pathetic. And so when he talks about it, it's good that he's talking about it, right? I think that transparency helps, and he clearly views it that way too. And he said, look, I don't have any problem with discussing it, but we should be concerned by the fact that somehow his medical records were put out there. And then, some people will look at that and go, well, is that the government's effort to discredit him? Or is that somebody's effort to discredit him? I don't know why anybody else why would you do that?
Episode 1285, Be Real, breaks down modern government surveillance.
Our government and other governments could debunk any information on UFOs, anything, because there wasn't like the wide communication that exists now, right? So I think now they put in people who are saying this crazy, wild, way out shit so that people that are really trying to expose truth on certain things, they get looked at as whack jobs like the rest of those that are trying to say, oh, well, flat earth, or we're on a disc, or we're in a globe, or blah, blah, blah.
The government's spying on you. They'll throw all that together. The government is spying on you.
Yeah, they are. That is for sure.
No, they really are.
That it's since George Bush Jr. was president, they've been listening to our phone calls. That's a fact. That was one of the things they enacted with the Homeland Security, that they can record every American's call. And whatever conversation mentioned certain keywords, as we were saying earlier, they would get shuffled off to a certain department, and those guys were red flagged and looked at, and that still happens today.
Still to this day, you don't need a warrant; they can just listen.
I mean, I'll tell you this, right? There was I've been traveling 20 some odd years at this point, where when I was coming back into the United States, for a long time I would not get randomly checked or anything like that. They just let us go by, and I made a few posts somewhere, with an abundant amount of cannabis, right? And right after that post, each time I came back into the United States, they sent me into secondary for a search. And I started asking, like, hey, been traveling for X amount of years now. I've noticed that the last 4 times that I've come back from another country, you guys are randomly, checking my bags now. What's the deal? Am I red flagged? What's going on with my passport? Well, I'm not really allowed to tell you this, but I mean, what kind of postings have you made on your social networks?
Really?
Yeah. And I said, okay, say no more. And I already knew what it was, because I had put a post with like 4, 5, 6 pounds in it.
What does 5 pounds of weed even look like?
It's lot.
It's so light. That's like giant pillows filled with weed.
Yeah. So, right then and there, I knew, from that reaction that he had, that anybody with any sort of that's involved in entertainment, music, athlete, whatever, actor, actress, they're watching all of our shit.
Oh, for sure.
They're listening and they're watching.
Episode number 1759, with Oliver Stone, exposes JFK assassination cover-up.
The community of people that are obsessed with the JFK
Thank
assassination
God.
is pretty
Thank
thorough.
God.
It's
I mean,
amazing.
there are a lot of nutcases,
Yes.
too, out there, but those serious people are really good, and they're the ones that kept this case alive.
Well, it's a thing that a conspiracy theorist really looks to.
I don't use that word. I think truth seeker is much more.
Okay, well, forget about that word, but someone who's interested in uncovering the truth about this assassination, the type of person that has that mindset that's interested in uncovering the truth about any
Yes,
historical
that's
event.
correct.
This is one of the best ones.
That's
because
it.
there's
That's what a
significant
historian does.
Yes, there's significant evidence, and there's significant evidence that there is a conspiracy.
Significant evidence.
Significance. I mean,
I would say from the beginning there was, yes, well, you have a shot from the rear and a shot from the
yes,
front.
well, I was going to get into that. So when you detail so brilliantly in this documentary all of the people that were involved in manipulating evidence, whether it's autopsy photos, whether it's the evidence about the actual shots, where they were fired from, the impact, like where the exit wounds was, all these various people that were involved. How many people knew what had actually happened? Because it seems like there was a concentration of people that was not small. And one of the things that people who like to use the pejorative term conspiracy theorists, they always want to point to people can't keep a secret. Well, the fuck they can't. They had to.
It's a giant maze. It's so confusing.
Yes.
That no one would be believed if they could.
Right.
They're one part. Think of it as departments of this. Somebody pops up and says, "I know this." So he disappears in the maze. It's another
Right.
piece of information.
Yeah.
There's been no attempt by government to follow up on this at all. They dismissed. They had the HSCA in 1978, right? That came about because of pressure. And a lot of that was classified still and disappeared for a while. We got it out, all that stuff. They decided that there was a probable conspiracy based on the acoustic evidence of the motorcycles. But we don't want to go into that because that's a whole other story.
Acoustic evidence
Acoustic,
from sound
from the
the
rear
recording?
and the front.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
The shots.
the physical evidence of the impact on the body is
That's
way
more important, yeah.
way more important and way more obvious.
Yeah.
That first of all, the establishment of the magic bullet was one of the most preposterous things that the United States public has ever accepted.
And I think we did a great service by driving a stake through that heart of that vampire because it's been around forever.
Well, you detailed in so many different ways,
Yeah.
too. You detailed all the various ways that they had tried to establish it. Once they found the wound in the back, they tried to
Well,
establish...
don't confuse it. First of all, the magic bullet, there's no chain of custody on it. The
Right.
FBI lied, and we
Yes.
proved it in the film.
Yes, you did.
Because the times don't match
Right.
on when it was given. So the FBI down and out lied. Now Hoover, of course, never wanted to believe that Oswald did it alone. He had to, because they put themselves in a straitjacket. They said 3 shots. There were not 3 shots. There was probably 4 or 5 shots. 3 shots, one assassin who, why? What's his motive? He was a perfectly reasonable young man. He was in the corridor being yelled at, and he said, I need a lawyer. I'm a patsy.
Yes.
The guy didn't behave like he was proud of what he had done.
No.
Which is what they said. He was a communist, an assassin. They had this background of visiting Russia. Of course, we found out, the community found out that it wasn't everything didn't meet the eye. It was a whole other story going on. That Oswald had been associated with the CIA.
Yes.
Not that he'd been an agent, but he'd been watched by the CIA for 4 years. That we know without a doubt now because of what we declassified. James Angleton, the counterterrorist chief, had a file on Oswald since before Russia. They knew him. They knew what he was doing up until the week. Well, apparently they disappeared his flash warning about a week before the assassination, which means to say you don't need to check Oswald if you are Secret Service. You see him somewhere on a parade route. You'd have to clear out those type of people. The Secret Service is very aware of people who have backgrounds who could be dangerous. They took that off the signal on Oswald.
The other thing is that Oswald was working both sides. Clearly, that he was working with the pro-Castro and the anti-Cuba movement.
But the CIA set up both.
Yes,
The CIA set up the pro and the con.
Right. So it's very clear that they were well aware of him.
Dip him in the Cuban poison. Sheep dip him, just make him look like a commie who loves Castro. That was the intention, I believe. I believe that the CIA was so upset about these 2 near invasions of Cuba that this was a chance, by killing Kennedy, to get the United States to move against Castro. And this is where Johnson is not, you can't blame Johnson, because he felt that there was this pressure right away. And he said to the Warren Commission guys, he says, look, there's a lot of pressure to point the finger at Russia and China, and Russia and Cuba. We don't want to do that because we're going to have a nuclear war if we do that. Like 40 million people are going to be dying. That's what he told Warren. Warren went white. In those days it was very serious. 40 million people, my God. He had all the weight of the country on his shoulders, and that's why he accepted this lousy job as the chief commissioner. So Johnson used that story, but Johnson believed it. I think he believed it. I think he believed in some way. I'm not sure. Let me put something, this is very important. Marvin Watson was his aide to Johnson. In 1970, Church Committee, he testified that Johnson, after he read the IG report that we talked about earlier, which said that there were no assassination. President Kennedy or Robert had never authorized any assassination attempt on Castro, right? He read that report, and he told Watson, according to Watson, he said, I now believe the CIA was probably involved in the assassination. That's what he said.
Wow.
In 1967, when he read the report.
Wow.
It comes out at the Church Committee, which is classified, disappears for some reason. We find it. We find it again because of this ARB.
So he was probably left in the dark as well.
I do believe so. I think he's definitely involved in the cover-up because he doesn't want to have a war.
Right.
But he changes the whole policy of Kennedy right away. We have that declassified call between him and Robert McNamara. What does Johnson say in that call? Do you remember? It's in the film. He says, I was never in agreement with you and the president about withdrawing from Vietnam. I thought you were wrong. He says that proudly because he's going in.
Right.
Why he wants to go into Vietnam and not Cuba, is another issue. But think about that. Just think about the implications of that. Johnson is moving towards war in Vietnam.
And how deep in that he was looking to do something to weaken the grip of the CIA. Not just get rid of those 3 guys, but he also wanted to diminish the CIA's influence.
Yeah, but that wasn't his only thought. He had 100 things to deal with.
Right, that's the problem, right?
The world.
And newly in office.
Well, yeah, by 60. He said statements about the generals. He said, they're not worth a bucket of piss or whatever it was. They're not. generals think they know everything. They always want to go to war. They want the parades, but they don't want the casualties. They don't want the result. And that's true for the United States. We go to war with a lot of hoopla, and we come out and we leave our people. We leave our people who go over there mostly in very difficult states, either suicide or in veterans hospitals with limbs blown off. It's not fun, war. And we treat it like, I think the United States has never experienced a war. I think that's a problem.
On our shores.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when we do, we're shocked.
So we have a distorted perception of what war is.
I think the Russians are much more realistic because every Russian is related to somebody who was killed in World War II.
Right.
It's in their hearts. It's seared in. And I can't speak for the Chinese, but they lost like a couple of million men in Korea, so they must have been a lot of family pain there.
Have you ever tried to calculate how many people were involved in the cover-up of the assassination? Because when you break down all the various people that you document, everyone from Arlen Specter to everyone that's on the Warren Commission's report, it's very clear that those folks had to know that what they were doing was bullshit. From what you said about the FBI chain of custody for the magic bullet to the alteration of the autopsy photos and the difference between
the autopsy itself.
Yes, the autopsy itself. The difference between the Dallas autopsy and the way they looked at it at Bethesda, Maryland.
There was no autopsy in Dallas. It was just
the examination of the
It was very
body.
quick. The tracheotomy.
Yeah. The tracheotomy and also the description of the exit wound in his head.
Well, that comes out later.
Yeah.
Although some people didn't see it, but 40 people. What the ARB did, thank God, was collect all the people who saw the rear exit wound, and it was huge. We showed the film in the film. We showed the 40 people who saw it.
What's really crazy you document in the film was the fact that it wasn't really his brain. I
was going to go to that.
Please. The brain that they had used as a piece of evidence that this was Kennedy's brain had clearly been in formaldehyde for at least 2 weeks.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad our documentary, and this is James D. Eugenio who wrote it. He's really the guy who reads everything, remembers everything through all these years, and there's 1 million documents. We drove a stake through the magic bullet. That's clear. There's no chain of custody. The FBI lied. They also, in the matter of the autopsy, the brain is intact. And it was photographed as such. It was a clean. The whole area was still there, whereas it's impossible because the brain was seen. You see it spraying out in the car in the Zapruder film. You see it. The nurse Audrey Bell is talking about I can't remember the medical term, whatever it's called. It's spilling out on the floor of Parkland.
Yeah.
And when they weigh the brain, as they do in an autopsy, it comes out normal.
Well, not just normal, but extra large, right?
A little bit. Yeah.
Larger than average. It was like.
It's impossible. And what's more important is, and this drives a stake again through the heart of it, the photographer of the autopsy, John Stringer, the autopsy photographer. He's a straight guy. He's pro-Warren Commission, all that stuff. They bring him back. The ARB brings him back, and they show him the photos that we now have of that are in the National Archives, and he says, I never photographed that.
Right.
It was he took an up view of the brain. He never took a basilar view from below.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I never photographed that.
And
that's very important.
There's also some evidence that they had drawn hair in to cover up the exit wound.
Yes. I don't know about the evidence, but definitely the photograph shows that the hair had been pulled in. The shot is bizarre. It's bizarre shots. So the autopsy is off. The brain is off. Photos are off. Then you go, the Garrison trial revealed that one of the autopsists, Peter Fink, saying that they were not in charge of the autopsy. The military was.
Right.
They wouldn't let him put his finger in the back hole.
Right.
They told him what to do. And they were very bullying. In fact, can you imagine doing an autopsy on the president and having 20 or 30 people looking at you from a gallery?
And they were telling him what he was able to do and not able to do. So the autopsy was being directed.
Yeah, I showed that in the movie. Don't touch that.
Right.
Don't do that.
Which is so you have to think that.
Plus, they have the best autopsy people in the world, civilian, all around Washington. Why wouldn't they call them in? No.
Right.
There's no desire.
So they had a predetermined ending that they wanted to achieve. or a result that they wanted to achieve.
Three
So-
bullets, one assassin.
But this is what's crazy is like you've got to think, okay, well then you have at least those 30 people that are in the audience watching that autopsy. What do they know?
I don't know that.
But isn't that crazy? If all 30 of them know that Lee Harvey Oswald didn't act alone.
No, we don't know that.
We don't know.
No,
right.
I mean, we don't know some of them.
But there's obviously a directive.
Well, there again, now we don't know.
I shouldn't say obviously directed, but they're doing something to influence the way this autopsy is being done. At least some of the people are giving direction, giving instruction, and you got to wonder, why would they do that? Like, what motivation would they have unless they knew that there was a predetermined result that they need to achieve?
Well, you have, of course, the Johnson fear that it would become a hysteria, Russia or Cuba being accused of killing him, and it would be a situation that they could no longer control. That's a legitimate excuse to cover up.
Mm-hmm.
One interesting story. It's in the 4-hour version, not in this 2-hour version. That's coming out in the end of February. We show a moment in the autopsy where one of the technicians, the doctor looks up and he says, "There's cigar smoke blurring this thing." It was just cigar smoke smells, covers up the air and stuff. It looks you don't smoke a cigar in an autopsy.
In an autopsy, crazy.
He says, "Who's doing that? Find out. Tell him to put it out." He goes over to the gallery, and guess who's smoking the fucking cigar?
Who?
General Curtis LeMay, the figure from Strangelove that Kubrick was satirizing.
That's hilarious.
And he says, "Can you put it out?" LeMay simply looks at him, blows smoke in his face, and the guy wrote. He was a technician. He just wanted. He's telling the truth. Walks back. Couldn't get him to put the cigar out.
Wow,
that's pretty interesting.
Episode number 2194 with Luis Elizondo explains how UFOs really. 1299 with Annie Jacobson on government psychic experiments.
Yeah, I think fate and circumstance are giant. Fortune is giant. There's no question about it. Some children get shot in drive-bys. Yeah. That's just horrible, horrible luck and unfortunate circumstance. There's a lot of it is fortune and fate.
How about people getting lost? Right?
Lost, how so?
Okay. So the book that I told you I wrote on the psychics phenomenon.
What do you believe about that?
Again, I'm neutral, right?
I'm not.
You're not? Tell me. I want to hear what you believe.
I think there's a lot of people that are full of shit.
Absolutely.
I think
My
it's almost
God.
all people that are talking about being psychic are full of shit. But I do think that there is a strange connection that we have with each other that's intangible. And I think that some people have better connections than others. Just like some people are more intelligent. Like we were talking before the podcast about Elon Musk, and it's painfully aware when you talk to him what a chimp you are. That he's so fucking smart, and his brain is it's built different. Just like some people have defective hearts, some people have a heart like Lance Armstrong. It's incredible, huge, an anomaly. Some people have giant hands.
He has a big heart, literally?
Yes, he has literally and they don't know whether or not that's from training or steroids and EPO or whether or not it's something he was born with. They really don't know. But he has an unusually sized heart. Unusually large. But what was my point?
Fate, circumstance, getting lost.
Oh, psychics.
Psychics.
That's what it is. I think that most of the people that can tell you the future are full of shit. Most of the people that are, I think people get feelings. I think sometimes you think about someone and they call you, and I don't know what that is. I don't know if that's just complete fortune. Like how many times are you thinking about a person when they don't call you? That's the argument against it. But how many times are you thinking about that person and they don't call you, but they're thinking about you as well? How many? I mean, how often is that with star-crossed lovers? They find each other years later, and they tell each other they've been thinking about each other all the time, and they can't believe it.
Right.
That's and when you get that text from someone, maybe that's just someone prone to action, but maybe there is some sort of a connection, some sort of quantum entanglement between you and someone you spent time with or shared energy with. It's possible. It's possible. But the problem is you have these mediums and psychics, and those people are just assholes. And I have a friend, his name's Banachek, and he runs a Las Vegas mentalist show where he shows you how he does these tricks. But he'll tell you absolutely these are he's been on the podcast. He's a brilliant, brilliant man. But he'll tell you these are tricks. I'm showing you how I do this. I'm going to tell you this is a trick. I'm not going to give you how I do it, but I'm going to tell you while I'm doing it, this is a trick. but he's pulling all this information out of people about their past, their childhood. He's guessing people's ages. He's guessing where they grew up. I mean, and it's all little sneaky shit. You know, it's the way they do it. It's a skill as much as anything. And so when you see these people that are channelers or, you know, psychics that are telling you about someone in your past that's trying to contact you, they're con artists almost exclusively. I mean, maybe there's like one lady in Tibet that has a broken gene and she could tune into the next dimension and extract some information from it. But in my experience, the vast majority of those people that I've talked to that claim to have psychic ability were also at least partially full of shit. They had weird ego problems that were glaring that they didn't notice. Right. You know, like I could see it, that this is a gross way to behave, and they don't see it. Their interpersonal relationships, the way they communicate with people was like an agent, like a fake Hollywood person or something. There's something bullshitty about them.
Yeah.
And people who lie a lot, I think if you lie a lot, it's very difficult for you to tell what a lie is.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I think you lose your connection. I think when you bullshit, I think you also bullshit yourself. I mean, I don't think these psychics are 100% honest even with themselves. I don't think this is like, I'm going to fuck this lady over. She thinks she's going to talk to her husband. I'm going to tell her some nonsense, take her money. I think some of them actually believe they're getting information. You know, my grandmother used to believe that. My grandmother was, she was a very eccentric lady, and old Sicilian lady, and she would tell you about like old Italian ladies all like want to play the lottery. They all have numbers there, and she was playing the numbers. It wasn't even the lottery. It was like the organized crime numbers racket. And she would always say, I was going to pick this number, and I just at the last minute I changed the number, and wouldn't you know it, the first one came in, and she was so mad. But it was always that I had a dream of this, and I had a vision of that, and it was all visions and dreams and psychics. But everything worked out horribly for her. It always did. Like if you were really psychic, you would have better instincts. Like this is just this inclination that people have that there's something special about their perceptions and that they're psychic. And it's always these really wacky people that believe they're psychics in my experience.
Which, I mean, I think you're talking also about what some scientists would call the self-fulfilling prophecy, you know, that if you believe this, things happen, manifest themselves, and you can convince yourself that you believe this. But for me, I'm super interested in people who really believe in psychics, right? Like that's what, and the military, for example. And, you know, the most
interesting. Do you ever talk to Ed Danes? You ever talk to those guys, the remote viewing guys?
I talked to a lot of the scientists who taught the remote viewing, and I talked to a number of remote viewers for the book. But the most interesting of all was the astronaut Ed Mitchell, right? And he was so I'm interested in like the psychology behind what are you looking for in that. And I saw that I was doing some research in an archive, and I came across a photo of what turned out to be Ed Mitchell on the moon reading a piece of paper. Okay, it's this extraordinary image because you're like, wait a minute, he's on the moon and he's reading a document. What is that document? I found out the document was a map of the moon. Okay, Mitchell got lost on the moon and literally pulled a map out of like, okay, he was trying to get to a certain crater, and they had a very limited amount of time to get there.
There it is right there.
Right? Okay, there he is.
Wow.
I mean, think about that. It's like the most advanced technology of the time.
Why doesn't the guy with the camera tell him where to go?
Different story,
taking a picture
right?
of him. He'd be like, hey, bro,
right,
this way.
move left.
Let's just follow our footprints. We're the only ones walking. What are you, stupid? Turn around, look at the ground. See those things? That's where you walked. Let's go that way. Jesus Christ. I'd be so mad at him. I'd be like, bro, you pulling out a map? Who wrote that map? Who's no one's even been here. Come on, man.
They had little maps folded up in their pockets in case they got lost. They were on the way to this crater. And in that crater they were going to find, allegedly, rocks that were going to solve the mystery of the moon's creation, the origin story, right? So they had like all this pressure. They couldn't find it. The heart rate's up. The guys at Houston are like, you got to turn back. Your heart rate's going crazy. And think about it. Mitchell tells me, I went to interview him at his house when I think it was his last interview before he died. And he said there we had gotten 240,000 miles to get lost. They missed the crater by 900 feet or something.
Really?
Yeah.
So he never got to the crater?
Never got to it. He was devastated. And on the way back from the moon, he has this, what he told me was a psychic change, right? His consciousness flipped, and he became convinced that psychic powers were real. And that is really the beginning of his foray. I mean, Mitchell became a huge proponent of psychic warfare, of the idea behind what you're talking about that we spoke of as being sort of charlatanism, and he dedicated the rest of his life to it.
Well,
and he was
had
ridiculed.
Some wacky
he was
beliefs,
ridiculed.
but he had some wacky beliefs. He had some
Yes.
wacky beliefs about aliens as well.
And I think
he
that
thought
comes
that we were definitely in contact with aliens, and
that comes from he was so vilified by the scientists and by the astronauts and by the kind of military men, because this was just, he told me the story of when they were in quarantine after they came back from the moon, right? He and Shepard were sitting there, eating breakfast, waiting, and Shepard, a story broke that Mitchell had done some ESP experiments on the way back from the moon. And Shepard said to him, look at this nonsense. The newspapers will do anything to make a buck. And Mitchell said, I did that. I actually did that.
Well, what experiments?
So he was doing ESP experiments on the way back from the moon. He had a psychic in Chicago, a Swedish psychic, that he was sending messages to.
Was she hot?
It was an old Swedish man, right?
Okay.
I don't think, named Olaf, right?
But I hear Swedish psychic.
Right?
Like, I gotta get to my psychic. Can't wait to take
Right.
my clothes off.
No. No, I'll introduce you to Olaf.
Okay,
Right?
okay. I saw the movie Frozen.
I didn't see that one.
Olaf's the little snowman.
I didn't. Oh, you got younger kids.
Yeah.
I missed that one. Mine are older.
Anyway, sorry. So Ed Mitchell was talking to this hot chick in
The hot old man in and the story broke because the Swedish psychic could not resist telling, leaking to the press that he had done these experiments.
What experiments were they?
Well, psychics train on these little cards called Zener cards, right? So you have different symbols on them, and one person. That's how they decide whether or not they're being psychic. There would be a veil between us, and I would say, "What are you seeing?" Right, and you would call it out. So it's like a control system. And Mitchell had these items with him on the way to the moon and did these experiments to try to see whether you could have a psychic connection with someone back on Earth. I mean, that was.
Did it work?
Well, no. And he took notes. He showed me the notes. It was so wild to be at his house in Florida, and he pulls out this old spiral notebook with water stains on it that actually went to the moon. I was like, wow, this is really something else. I mean, it was one of those moments in time where you're just like, I don't know, there was a feeling of sadness around all of it, with Ed Mitchell sitting there in his his chair and talking to me about what it was like to be an Apollo astronaut. On the walls, I'm with a lot of these sources with incredible amounts of awards on the walls. But what does that mean after time passes, right?
So his experiments didn't work, but he still believed in psychic powers.
Yes. I mean, so what we were saying, he was ridiculed, and he had such a tough time with it. And so the people who propped him up and the people who gave him a lot of encouragement had sort of more radical ideas as he grew older. And
Who
I
were these
think
people?
Conspiracy theorists who really kind of used him because he was an Apollo astronaut. And so he was so much more famous than any of them would ever be. And they really took advantage of him, I think.
So you think they manipulated him with information and tried to get him more and more enthusiastic about their
I mean, it's speculation
obsessions?
on my part, but you kind of go where the love is, right?
He was an older guy, too.
Yeah.
And I'd seen some interviews with him as he was getting older and older, and he seemed to be having some difficulties, thinking about things clearly.
And people take advantage of that.
Yeah, he was really obsessed with extraterrestrial life. It was really interesting because didn't he claim that he had seen something while he was up in space?
I think people helped him make that claim. That was my understanding of it, of reporting it. I mean, I stayed away from some of the crazier speculative things about him because what I was really interested in when I was writing that book was how his authority and power allowed the program to get funding, right? Because
Yeah.
so much of this is, it's like, who's funding this stuff and why? And it really does come down to authority, which is always a narrative that I find fascinating, right? How do people get the authority to say go on these programs, or we should do that? I mean, the question you asked of like, who's in charge, right?
Right.
And in all of this, what I learned more than anything is that the office of the president has a lot more power than I think any of us are aware.
Episode number 2244 with Ryan Graves. Joe Rogan questions Navy pilot Ryan Graves on drones.
So, I've had the privilege of interacting with a lot of government organizations over the past few years as I've been digging down this rabbit hole. Law enforcement at a federal level, DOD, executive branch, legislative branch, and some of the folks that I've come in contact with, they specifically work on weapons of mass destruction. Okay, so that's their job. So if there's a loose nuke in the United States, among other agencies, they would be some of the people that would be sitting in a skiff for 24 hours a day trying to figure out where it is and to go get it, right? So you can imagine that would be their number one priority, right? So I engage with these folks. I ask them, what's the sense here? People are kind of starting to panic a little bit, and this message is getting out there more and more broadly. And they assured me that's not the case, that there is not a loose nuke or other type of weapon of mass destruction that these objects, whatever they are pursuing right now. Otherwise, they would be working in a skiff nonstop to make that go away, that problem go away. So, that's part of why I have a high confidence level that this is not a response to a massive imminent, weapons of mass destruction threat on the eastern seaboard. So I just want to try to dispel that rumor right now. I've seen a lot of talk of that online, and I don't, although this is I think a dangerous and scary situation that's going on right now, at least from that particular angle, that's not the indications I'm receiving.
So how would they persuaded you? Just by saying that's not the case? Or have they given you any information that leads to this conclusion? Like,
they would be the people actively working it, essentially, right? So,
and they're not?
They're not working it, right? So either the government is holding back that secret from the direct resources within the government that are responsible for finding these systems, or they're not working the issue because there isn't an issue there to work.
So the thing that I had heard was that it was a missing nuke from Ukraine. And if that was the case, what could they do? Is there any truth to this idea that we have the type of drone capability that we could send these things out and they would search for gamma radiation and they'd be able to find a nuke? Is that?
So there are teams that respond to those types of potential emergencies, typically within the Department of Energy. Having potentially hundreds of drones flying around trying to identify these isn't necessarily the best way. Gamma radiation is typically well shielded in weapons, and at very high altitudes or even moderate altitudes, like we're seeing these objects, it would be pretty difficult to detect them. And the way that NIST, the DOE, typically operates in this environment is ground-based teams searching for radiation itself. So it's not necessarily consistent with how they would do it to begin with. And then based off of that other information, that's what leads me to believe that's not the case.
Well, that makes me feel better because I was freaking out this weekend.
I think a lot of people were.
Yeah, I got a couple. But it's one of those things, especially in this day and age with social media. There's so many narratives that get spread and retweeted. And, I know a guy who's an insider and he says to get out of the East Coast and, head for Nevada or, there's a lot of that shit going on.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different versions of these drones, and this is what's weird. If they weren't ours, if they're not ours, you would think that they could just track them and find out, well, where are they landing, who's got them, how are they being used, is it RFI, like radio frequency, is it some sort of a different technology that's allowing them to pilot these things, like what is it?
Yeah.
They'd be able to tune into that and figure it out, right? So how come no one's been arrested? How come no one's been caught? How come they haven't, tracked these things down to the source?
Yeah, so there's a lot of good questions there. Let me back up by starting with the fact that this started about 2 years ago, at least. So,
but not like this.
A little bit like this.
Really?
So,
In this volume?
not in this volume. That's the differentiator right there. But so Langley Air Force Base, you might be familiar with the fact that they had drone incursions of an unknown type, unknown origin last year.
Right.
That happened during about a 2.5, 3 week period right before Christmas. Right where we are now. That also happened the year before over Langley. Unknown objects operating over the base. They couldn't tell where they were going. They were unprepared for them. Same period of time, 2-3 weeks before Christmas. This is year 3, right? And they were expecting them to come again for third year in a row over Langley. And there was, some effort put forward to be able to better understand these when they came back. And they did come back, but they came back in a much wider swath, right? Now we have them all over New Jersey, all the way up to Massachusetts. And it's hard to tell exactly with the quality of the reporting right now because it seems to be, the bigger the story gets, the more people are just looking up and seeing anything and pointing it out. But there are reports from Texas to Florida to California, Ohio, Minnesota, Pennsylvania. I mean, it's not just New Jersey itself, it seems. And even the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base was shut down for a drone incursion just this last Friday, a couple of days ago. So this isn't just a one-off event. It is in the sense that it's so large and so many people are paying attention to it. But this has been occurring for at least 3 years around military bases, and that's nothing to say with the incidents that we were seeing over the Eastern Seaboard and other training ranges that fighter pilots were seeing as they were doing their operations. So I'm a little hesitant to link it to the full story that we've been having here and this full conversation, but at least for 3 years this has been occurring. So, kind of getting back to your question, why can't we do more about it? It's a hard problem, I think, for a number of reasons. It's hard, but it's very solvable, right? I think this can be solved. We can solve it. But right now, kind of the word on the street is that these objects appear to be coming from over the ocean. There's senior congressmen, there's Coast Guard personnel, there's law enforcement. They're seeing a large number of these come from somewhere over the ocean. I don't know if that means necessarily they're popping out of the water physically or if they're coming from some unknown location in the water and then proceeding over the coast. I don't know how that relates to Ohio. That's a pretty long trip if they are coming over the ocean. And from the videos I've seen and the conversation I've had, they are detecting these objects through kind of normal mechanisms like radar systems, optical camera systems. They are flying very low. In some cases, they seem to be operating as a group in the vicinity of each other, flying past each other, flying very up close to each other, and then proceeding to do whatever they are that they're doing. It's an unknown right now if they are emitting energy or not. So, like radio communications or their own maybe active sensor systems. It's unknown. I've poked on that front, and the best I can tell, the government doesn't know either.
That seems so weird that they don't know that. Like, it's just very disturbing that someone could operate these things and have, how many, what is the estimated number of them?
That's a great question. At this point, I'm comfortable making a guess of probably over 800 or 1,000. And how many of those are sightings of the same object? How many of those are individual objects? How many of those are unique objects?
Right.
So it's tough to say, but this isn't just a few objects that people are seeing. And so I can imagine some technologies that will allow traditional UAVs or drones to operate without emitting, right? So they could have a self-contained navigational system, right? Maybe they have their own onboard maps and they're using cameras to map where they are.
So then they would be completely autonomous. You just send them out there and they would have a task and they would go through whatever their task is and navigate via their GPS or whatever tracking system they're using.
Exactly. And then, what is their task, right?
Right.
Is it just to instill panic and fear? Is it because they're sensing something? And if they are sensing something, they would have to be using what's called passive sensors, right? So like a camera system is passive, but if you're shooting a radar out and having it bounce off of something, that's active, right? And that's easier to detect than a passive system. So I could imagine, a fully self-contained autonomous drone system that is doing something potentially with passive sensors that allows it to operate without emissions, which is going to make it harder to track.
If they're doing it at night, if they do have passive systems, like some sort of an optical system, wouldn't that be hindered by the low light conditions, or do we have stuff that is able to detect whatever they're looking for at night?
Yeah, depends what they're looking for. But ultimately, there is tech. There's electro-optical systems. There's infrared camera systems, not unlike the jets or the systems that we had on my jet. But we were able to detect these objects with infrared when we were flying off the eastern seaboard. There are a number of reports from law enforcement that their infrared systems are not able to pick these objects up. And not just this year, but also the incidents over Langley last year. The pilots that responded to that incident, I've spoken to them, they weren't able to lock these up with their infrared systems either. So they do seem to be exhibiting some type of signature management.
That's interesting. So is the signature management so is it a heat signature that they're giving off? So maybe there's some sort of a cooling mechanism inside of these things? Like how, if they have a propulsion system, so you would imagine it's some sort of an electric engine, right? Because a lot of them are very quiet. That's got to be giving off some kind of heat, right?
Yeah, and that goes to some like very base physics, right? Like we create heat whenever we have, stored energy and we utilize it. So to be able to mitigate that to such a degree that you can't even detect them at all, it's pretty tough. I mean, I can imagine you can reduce your signature. We do it in fighter jets, right? Through kind of just like baffles where we cover the engine essentially to make it harder to see. But to have zero ability to detect or lock onto these objects is not a technology I'm familiar with.
So other than that, are they exhibiting any type of movement that's extraordinary, or their ability to turn angles? Is there anything about them that points to this being superior technology?
It's tough to say. Based on what I've seen just in the public from reports and kind of amateur photographers and witnesses, some of them do seem to be making pretty sharp turns. I wouldn't call them like physics breaking turns, but they don't seem to be operating like a normal aircraft, right? So they're down low. They're making what appear to be pretty high G turns, maybe like 3, 4, 5 G turns at relatively low air speeds, which is indicative of them having a pretty significant power supply, right? Anytime you turn like that, you're burning energy essentially. So for them to be able to make these high G maneuvers and then remain in the area for another 5 or 6 or 7 hours and still have the battery life or whatever's propelling them to then go over the ocean to a point where they're untrackable. Again, I'm not really familiar with that type of capability either.
Yeah, it's the thing that disturbs me is not just that this is happening. There's so many drones and all these people are seeing them. It's happening for so long and nothing has been done. There's no, they're not scrambling jets to try to meet these things and follow them and track them. They're not shooting them down. They're not. It's just we appear so vulnerable because of this. Mm-hmm. Because if these are ours or if these are people just fucking around and it's not a threat, okay, great. But why is it so prevalent? Like, why are there so many of them, and why have there been nothing that these people that are trying to investigate this have been able to do that's effective to put a stop to this?
So there's some laws in this country that are a little bit antiquated when it comes to dealing with situations like this. So my understanding is right now these things are operating mostly in what's called Class G airspace, which is really low. It's away from airports. Not all, of course, right? They're over bases. So
they're over LaGuardia.
Yeah. But here's I think where a lot of the trouble's coming in from. I think the government has to make the presumption at this point, based off the feedback from the DoD and others, that if this is not a foreign adversary, then we have to make the assumption that it's a U.S. citizen that's operating these. Because of that, they essentially need a warrant in order to wiretap these.
What?
Yeah.
Even with the Patriot Act?
That's the feedback I'm receiving. That's the legal limitation.
Come on. They don't even need a warrant to get into my phone. Get the fuck out of here. I don't buy that.
Well, whether it's the reality situation or not, that's how they're proceeding, right? And so to overcome that, there's like a 120-page report that needs to be filed all the way up to the Deputy Attorney General of the United States in order to even intercept these signals that they may or may not even be emitting to be able to determine where they're going. And so I think that's one part of what's like slowing down this whole investigation. On the other hand, for base commanders, They have limited authorities to protect their base, but when they do, they need to submit basically a request all the way up to the Secretary of Defense. All right, so now you have this like super politically charged situation with a lot of risk of objects flying over the U.S. If they take action and shoot one of these down, even with the Secretary of Defense's permission, they're on the hook if that thing takes out a school bus or otherwise damages someone's property.
Or kills somebody.
Yeah.
Jamie, can you just do a quick search? Have there been drones that have been shot down?
I haven't seen anything. I was there's a story from what today's this 2 days ago. New Jersey lawmakers were having a press conference asking if the government could shoot one down so they can inspect it. So, I'm assuming they haven't shot one down if they're asking to shoot one down that day,
Episode 2016. Patrick Bet-David breaks down BlackRock and ESG power.
How much, Joe, have you looked at, Larry Fink, Soros, State Street, Vanguard, BlackRock? How much have you looked at what they're doing and what their ties are?
I've looked at it.
Yeah?
Yeah.
They're pretty much running everything.
Yeah.
S&P 500, the number that 88% of the companies on S&P 500, 88% of them, the largest shareholder of those companies is either State Street, BlackRock, or Vanguard. 88% of them, okay? And then you see their influence in defense contracts. Okay, so we went through a deal. I'm like, let me see if these guys, this ESG, Larry Fink, Vanguard, State Street, if they have any influence on military contract, defense contracts. If you Google the largest shareholder for Raytheon, 3 out of the 4 top shareholders of Raytheon, BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard. It could be top 3 with Raytheon, but I think it's 3 out of 4. If you go look up General Dynamics, if you go look up Boeing, if you go look up, Northrop Grumman, okay? And then you work backwards and you say, okay, how much money is that in what these guys are doing? You'll find the amount of money we spent in our military, $744 billion on how much we're making from defense, but you'll see some numbers saying last year it's 13% of our GDP, which is around $850 billion. That's more than the next 10 combined. We gave more money to Ukraine than Russia spent on their military last year. And when you look at these contracts, then you're like, okay, Fink is there, these guys are there. Okay, let's go look at Hollywood. Same thing you see there. Let's go look at pharmaceutical. Let's go look at this. And you're like, wait a minute. These guys essentially have a monopoly. Well, how big is BlackRock? $10 trillion. How big is $10 trillion? Only 2 countries have a bigger GDP than what BlackRock has, assets under management, U.S. and China. That's how big BlackRock is. So then they went and they started getting all these other guys to sign on and say, hey, we want you to participate with the same thing as well with ESG. And they ended up having, I think they had 31 signers. I think end of 2022, they got 60 something signers for a total of $70 trillion of assets under management that they're controlling. So now they're controlling other places. And just recently, if you saw the rebuilding of Ukraine, did you see this contract? Rebuilding of Ukraine, $400 billion contract. BlackRock and Chase is helping rebuild Ukraine. And then, okay, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but what the hell is going on here? They have that much control to get everybody to do what they want them to do? Yes. So Dylan Mulvaney, who cares? Why? Bud Light. How does that tie up? You got the DEI, the HRC, the human rights, and all this stuff. And then you go even deeper, which is even the crazier part with, the education, schools. Like, the biggest union we have in America, I think it's National Education something. NEA is the largest union we have. 3 million teachers are part of that union. And you look at that and you go deeper in that with open society and who's funding it, who's the money behind these organizations. Comes back, Soros. How do you feel about the kind of power they have right now to fight against them? Because this isn't like a billionaire can come out and say, I'm going to go up against these guys. They don't have a little bit of money. A billionaire to these guys is nothing. They got the kind of control that can make companies fire boards. They can replace CEOs. They can replace leaders if they don't like. They have their hands so much into it where many times when people say the people of power, I'm kind of like, who are the people of power? Are you convinced these guys are really running the world? Or what do you think about what some of these bigger companies are doing, like State Street, Vanguard, and BlackRock?
Well, they certainly have massive amounts of influence. What do you think they're doing?
It's the question is, how do you fight it? Like, for example, the way we fight mainstream is by what? The show that we do. And we have to be patient. It's going to take 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 20 years. Now you have some influence, right? Okay, we can fight. There is an actual strategy on how to fight that. No problem. You got a kid in school who's a bully. He's bigger than you. He keeps bullying you. You have a strategy on how to beat the guy. You take a year, jiu-jitsu 2 years, this, that. Boom. One fight, he knows, I'm never going to touch Joe again. Screw this thing. I'm not doing this no more, right? There is a play to it. When you have this much, Joe, 88% of S&P 500 companies, that is a form of a monopoly. If I'm a president, whether it's a Trump or whoever else goes out there and does it, our monopoly law in America is 50%. They say 50%. Like if you tie and said, at what point is it 50%? I've done calls with the FTC. Like we had one of our guys' technology we were using. The FTC called and said, hey, we want to have a call with you because they're thinking about buying this other technology company and we're worried it's going to be a monopoly. So we had the call, okay? At the end of the call with us, with a bunch of different people, we said, we love their product, we love their product. That deal didn't end up happening, okay? The monopoly law. Some of these guys are influencing it. But they say 50% is a monopoly law. Do you know how many people in America have an iPhone versus Droid? Do you know what the numbers, market shares in America with iPhones?
I think it's like 60.
58%, 60%. Yeah. That is already a monopoly. But who's knocking on the door of Apple? Tim Cook saying, hey, Tim, you got 58%. That's breaking a monopoly law. Nobody is. I think someone's got to break apart. You know, in 1993, I don't know which senator it was, these guys that were trying to get the defense contractors to be better at the pricing, what they were charging, because they were overcharging DOD, and DOD people don't know what the hell is going on. They're like, yeah, okay, how much? $68 million do it. $1.2 billion do it. I'm not going to over-negotiate the money. They took 51 defense companies, and they brought it down to only 5. It's only 5 companies right now when you want to buy anything. Think about that. So defense contractors is 5. We know how these guys make money. Earlier, you know, I was asking you a question, why do you think vaccine? And you're like, Pat, that's how they make their money, right? I mean, if you and I run a hotel, rooms are empty, we're not making money. We need people to stay in the rooms. If you and I are running a hospital, we need people on the beds to make money.
Yeah.
If there's no people on the beds, we ain't making money. If these 5 contractors are fighting for $744 billion, what do they want more of? Wars. They want more people dying. You know the Papa John's saying, better ingredients, better pizza, Papa John's. Mm-hmm. You know, these guys is more wars, more people dying, more profits, defense contractors, right? That's a valid concern that I have. Because behind closed doors, this whole military-industrial complex, when you look at the numbers, whoever becomes the president, unfortunately, this guy's an anti-establishment president, good. Unfortunately, if you're an anti-establishment president, everyone's going to come after you, especially these military defense contractors. So if a president got up and said, if I'm going to be the president, here's what we're going to be doing. We have to look at all the contracts. You can't overcharge us. We have to open it up. You have to sell some of your companies. You have to let them be independent again. You have to do this. You have to let them go public, separate, whatever way you got to break them apart to have competition again, because we don't have that today. You know, so that is a major concern where we say we have a commander-in-chief, but really the commander-in-chief is Larry Fink today. The guy running BlackRock is really the president of the United States, if we look at the kind of influence he's got in every industry, Joe. And he's like, well, you know, I kind of feel bad. I'm ashamed that all the weaponization, the word, you know, ESG is being used and all this other stuff. And Elon tweeted about the ESG. I don't know if you remember when Elon tweeted about ESG, saying the S in ESG is satanic. Okay? So this is a part where even a Charlie Munger, who is Warren Buffett's partner, says, look, I love Larry Fink, but I'm not interested in having an emperor. some words like that he said about Larry Fink. So this motive, and by the way, Larry Fink is an interesting guy because he majored in college political science. His aspirations was politics. He accidentally got into money. And he learned to trade, and then he lost $100 million at 36 years old, I think. And then he teams up with Schwartzman, and they start this company. And after a couple years, they got $5 billion under management, $8 billion, and $32 billion. And then they have a difference because, you know, he wants to give equity, and Jamie's, you know, Schwartzman's like, no, and then they separate. But influence of politics, you get into business, you're a billionaire. It's you, Soros. So I'm extremely concerned about what these guys are up to. And we think our president is the most powerful person. That person's not. Because behind closed doors, they're going to be like, look, guys, let's relax. That guy's only going to be there for 4 to 8 years. We're going to be all right. He'll be out. We're running the world. We're okay. We were running America, but now we're running the world. We control all the ETFs in America. We're controlling all this stuff. Everyone has to come through us, and we can tell everybody what to do because everybody fears not getting money from us, from being downgraded. A Tesla on ESG score is nothing. But if Philip Morris gets an A rating, how the hell the company that's Philip Morris has a better environmental social governance score, DEI, you know, not DEI, but the CEI, the score they give it over Tesla. So they can bully some of these guys.
Let me ask you this. What do you think the goal of ESG is? Why do you think they're establishing these sort of parameters? Like why is ESG a thing, and what's the benefit of it for them?
So Schultz said something very interesting. Schultz says, look, these guys are driven by money. They're not going to do anything to destroy an economy to lose their own money because they want that. I said, okay, it's a very good, Andrew Schultz. I said, that's a very good point, you know, on what you're saying. Fine. So, you know how sometimes Michael Jackson, you see the interview with him with kids. Oh, they're just sleeping in the bed. That's all it is. And we're just having a great time, and we're storytelling. And you're like, yeah, bro, I get it. You know, it's a little weird. You got a 7, 8-year-old, 10-year-old kid sleeping in your bed and, you know, all this stuff. And I'm just, it's a little bit fishy what you're talking about here. It's not normal. Well, if you're in Hollywood and you've slept with as many people as these people sleep, and then eventually you have to have other options because what else do you do? You have to try new things. How many threesomes have you had? How many this? How many that? So you start trying all these other things, and sometimes these guys go to such and such place. Doesn't matter. It's kind of weird and fishy, right, on what you want to do. Great. Okay. So why are these guys doing what they're doing? You have all the money in the world. You live in a $100 million house. Not you. Larry Fink and some of these guys. I don't know if he lives in a $100 million house, but you got the money to live in a $100 million. What else do you need?
Right.
You got nice cars. Jamie Dimon's got a $900 million art collection, according to an article. It's a nice art collection, right? You go to all the nice restaurants. You meet prime ministers. You meet presidents. And then maybe there comes a time when you're looking at a couple of these guys, they're presidents and prime ministers, and you tell yourself, I'd be a better president than you, bro. How the hell am I not reading the country? Or they tell themselves, you think you're a president? You're not a president. You work for me. What else is the motive?
But ESG, how does that factor into
But the point is control is what I'm saying. So the motive becomes control more than money. After you have all the money in the world, what's next? It's got to be control or a true vision. So Soros, when you're talking ESG, that story is a completely different story. You ever heard Soros' interview with 60 Minutes where he says, I see myself as a god? Have you ever seen this interview or what he says?
No.
Really?
He said he sees himself as a god.
Oh, my God. Jamie, do you mind pulling up the quote? I think it's, if you type in LA Times Soros God. If you type in LA Times Soros God, when you hear what he says, it's like the second to the last paragraph all the way to the bottom. The guy asks a question, you know, about who he views himself as. I want to quote it properly, exactly what he says in this
interview. Is there a video of him saying
this? 60 minutes. There's a video as well. So if you go all the way to the bottom, go a little bit higher, in the quote. No, go a little higher. I think it's a little higher. I'm kind of keep going higher. Sort of a different. Keep going higher. Prevailing values. A little higher. There's a part where he says, Keep going. What year is this article, by the way? Is this it's an old article. It's supposed
October
to be
2004.
That's the one. This is the one. Okay, right there. It seems that Soros believes he was anointed by God. I fancied myself as some kind of a god. If truth be known, I carried some rather potent messianic fantasies with me from childhood, which I felt I had to control, otherwise they might get me in trouble. And then on the next line, when asked by Britain's independent newspaper to elaborate on the passage, Soros says, it is sort of a disease when you consider yourself some kind of a god, the creator of everything, but I feel comfortable about it now since I began to live it out.